over the skies of Doha, where there have been interceptions of the Iranian missiles and drones that have taken place. And my colleague Susan Tehrani is still with us. Susan, you'd understand this better having lived in Iran. We do not know as to how many of the Iranian top leadership have been taken down. Reports say that about 40 of Iran's top leadership is gone. Now, there is a clear line of succession that had already been put in place by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and people who were close to him, that if one person were to be taken out, then another will step into his shoes. The fact that the Iranians are firing these missiles, the intensity of these missile and drone strikes has gone up. It does appear that the Iranians, unless the Americans would perhaps reach out to them, are not willing to negotiate, and that this war could in fact drag on. Now, for Donald Trump, he needs a quick victory, because if this war drags on, if the Iranians succeed in shutting down that Strait of Hormuz, it would make the crude prices go through the roof, which will in turn hurt the American economy. So before Monday morning, Donald Trump would prefer that he has a result. But is that possible at all, looking at how things are playing out at the moment?
The Israeli ambassador to the UN was very adamant to say that we are going to continue as long as it takes until our, quote, mission is accomplished. It's hard to imagine that that's going to be in a day's time. It's definitely going to be, according to U.S. defense officials, it's going to drag on for a few days, but U.S. officials also say at most a few weeks, if not just 1 week. As you mentioned, Iran is retaliating, but I think, again, once Iran confirms the death of Khamenei, I think a lot of things will change. Right now, Iran hasn't made that confirmation to its public. Although, there are celebrations across Tehran. We're seeing all those videos of people dancing and cheering. They get their news from outside sources. But once Iran acknowledges that Khamenei is not there, I think the war is going to take a different direction. Now, is it going to take a direction where, Iran continues to retaliate? Iran is going to, then that means that there are people in place. There was a plan in place that the Islamic Republic at least survives for some time. But when that news comes out, then, it's hard to imagine, how Iran wants to respond if its leadership is crumbling. I think a lot of it depends on that. But for Donald Trump, absolutely. The faster this ends, the better. Not only because of oil prices, not only because of the stock market, because there really is concern that the midterms are coming up, and the longer this war drags, the worse it's going to be for the president. Because remember, while we are in the news, we talk about it all the time. The United States said that Iran was very close to carrying out a preemptive strike against the United States. These reports do circulate, but President Trump really didn't go in front of the American public and give a very convincing speech as to why he decided to attack Iran. And the longer this drags on, the more questions are going to be raised by the public that what are we doing over there, and are we putting our troops in harm's way? And that's going to be a very bad look for the president. It's going to be very hard for him to defend this.
Donald Trump, in fact, did say in as many words that American lives could be lost, but this is something that happens in a war. That's not something that he has admitted. Susan, one other interesting aspect of what could now happen if Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has indeed been taken out. If there is going to be an individual who takes over the country, Donald Trump said that he had a good idea of who that could be. We don't know as to who that could be, but Donald Trump perhaps will know better. One of the individuals who thrown his hat into the ring is the Iranian crown prince who lives in exile in the United States of America, Reza Shah Pahlavi. What sort of legitimacy do you think he enjoys among some sections in Iran who perhaps may want him to come back? Do you think the Iranian people at large, the broad spectrum of them, would like Reza Shah Pahlavi back?
You know, it's hard to gauge the exact support. He does have real support inside Iran, but some believe that he has limited support. Now, the benefit of Pahlavi is that he's the only person whose name was chanted during those opposition protests in Iran. But because Iran is such an authoritarian system right now, it's not really completely open to polling exits. We constantly rely on independent surveys to find out. He definitely has a very large support among the diaspora, those that are outside of Iran. And his name has been called time and time again during those protests. We didn't hear anyone other's name beside him. But I think there is a growing concern, and despite the fact that Pahlavi has made clear that he wants to be a transitional leader, he doesn't want to reign as king as his father did before 1979. He wants a referendum. He wants the Iranian public to pick. But there is that concern among a sector of Iranians, and I think it's important to say that they are concerned that they're going to go from one sort of authoritarian figure like having a supreme leader to another one, which is an unelected king. And that's the real concern among the Iranians. But again, you know, the independent polls that we have seen, around 40 to 45% of Iranians inside the country would welcome him. But another question about Pahlavi is, you know, he seems to speak with very good intentions, and he really does seem like he loves Iran. That really shines through. But the question that some people are asking is, he has not been in Iran for so many years. How much does he know the Iran today, or the Iran that he left when he was 7 or 8 or 9 years old?
Those are some important questions. And also looking at, you know, how nations which have had American intervention have turned out in the past. Iraq, the Americans went in, they toppled the government of Saddam Hussein, and what happened afterwards is there for everyone to see. What happened in Libya after Muammar Gaddafi was dislodged in Tripoli, that's another example. Do you think with those scenarios that are so visible and so fresh in the memory of the people, you know, an American-led toppling of the government, how concerned do you think people in Iran would be? Though the government of the Ayatollahs could be repressive for some sections of the society, but what could come next is really the unknown. How do the people in Iran look at these aspects?
Yeah, when you look at those cases, the scenario is terrifying. And then also, you know, Iran has different fractions. It has the Turks, it has the Kurds. There was this great concern that Iran could get disintegrated into different sects, and there might be a civil war. However, from what I'm hearing from inside of Iran, the Iranians that were dissatisfied with the regime, they welcomed this help from the Americans because they believed that they themselves did not have the power and the resources to topple the Iranian regime because they had no means to. The only means they had was themselves, and when they did take to the streets, and you can see that they wanted that help from the United States because they took to the streets in droves, even more than before protests, when President Trump said, take to the streets, take over your institutions, help is on the way. When President Trump promised that, we saw an uptick in the protests and the uprisings. And the Iranians I talked to, they say they wanted this help. And they were very upset that President Trump didn't pull through, especially after we saw what happened to those demonstrators. Between 42,000 and 50,000 Iranians, ordinary Iranians, were killed by the regime for protesting. I mean, surely all of them were not Israeli spies. They were just ordinary Americans, from children 14 years old. So they, at this point, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. I was in Iraq after the war, after America's invasion, and the Iraqis said that, you know, Saddam Hussein was bad, but at least we had security at that point. They weren't happy with what happened after the topple of Saddam, even though they hated Saddam. I hope that that doesn't happen with Iran, I hope that they don't regret this, but at least for now, it's important to amplify their voice that they wanted America's help. Those that wanted the regime to go, they couldn't see it as any other way.
These are important conversations that Iranians will, of course, continue to have over the many days and months ahead. We still do not know because things are very, very fluid. Susan Tehrani will slip into a short break. More updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned to WION.